everybody. Happy Tuesday evening. Welcome to the Brothers of Dynasty Live Week 12 recap. I'm your host, Josh Christensen, joined as always by my two brothers, Jay and Andrew. Jay, what are you drinking tonight?
What's going on, Josh? I am drinking beer I had a couple weeks ago. Sierra Nevada Celebration. We're drinking that again. Still have some in my fridge, so we're bringing it back out.
Yeah, celebrate good times. Come on.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, we're celebrating holiday season, almost fantasy playoffs, lot to celebrate.
Yeah, well, maybe lots to celebrate.
Or
maybe you had both Dalvin, CMC, Debo, and Deandre Swift on your team this past week, or some combination there.
I have them on multiple teams. Some of them on the same team. So yeah, that was fun. That was cool.
Just look for the SFB tweet where someone's like, I got to the playoffs with them and now they're all gone.
I mean, I will say in our league, The Alchemist, I have Cook and Debo. That was literally like back-to-back plays. I've lost both of them for the rest of the game.
Bad.
Yeah, that was pretty bad
for you.
It was riding high. They were both doing pretty well, particularly Debo, and then all of a sudden they're both writhing in pain on the ground. So it was great.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been worse. They both seem like they'll be back in a couple games or sooner. But we didn't get Andrew what you're drinking tonight. So Andrew, what are you drinking? Stop showing your beard, Jay.
Wouldn't you know? I also have Celebration. We did not coordinate this. Last week it was much more likely coming back from Portland. We had
I like
Bissell
this.
Brothers.
We should continue this.
Let's just keep on keep trying to get like more and more obscure beers. And it's like, oh my god, you got that Trappist ale? We both go to Belgium to get like authentic Trappist ale.
This got
How
very
did I not
extreme
see you there? These are from the same monastery.
Well, how strange, guys, because I am also drinking White Claw. Were you guys not drinking White Claw?
Oh, yeah.
Celebration Claw.
Yep. The Celebration Claw. Yep.
It's watermelon. It's delicious.
That sounds like the celebration fruit.
It's a celebratory fruit. Everybody loves a slice of watermelon in the summer or late November, as we are right now.
Well, because a watermelon, like whoever has like a single serving watermelon, like that's a watermelon that you have with a group of people, typically in a celebration. So I think this all works.
I think it works out, but mostly how I have my watermelon is in a cup cut up already from a bodega, and it's kind of like spicy, to rip off.
Spicy.
Yeah, it's gotten real acidic and oxidized. Got a little funk to it. That's how I like my watermelon.
Yeah, they like
agricultural.
Yeah.
Well, it's agriculture. It's not very good, is it?
It's not. Grab another serving of it. This one's exactly the same as the other one.
Stop grabbing bodega watermelon in fruit cups.
Preserved with vinegar.
We should move on to some football. Before we do, we should mention that the Brothers of Dynasty is part of the Fantasy Football Collective network of podcasts. You can find the Fantasy Football Collective at FF_collective on Twitter. That is collective with a K. And for other great content and podcasts like Fantasy Nightcap, the Fantasy Boardroom, and Collective Knowledge. So check out all of their great content over at the Fantasy Collective. So on today's episode, we are going to be talking Dynasty rebuild targets, and we're going to do a fun kind of, game style. We've got groups of 3 players, and we are going to debate which of those 3 players we would prefer to buy as a Dynasty rebuild. A Dynasty rebuilder. I don't know the right word. What's the right word for that, Jay?
I don't know. Like, you're targeting them for a rebuild or a stash, kind of. Some are better than others, but I don't know. The guy you'd want to get back in a trade if you're rebuilding. Yeah,
rebuild. Yeah, there we go. Rebuild targets. Dynasty rebuild targets for the teams on the mend.
And when do we use the term target when talking about football?
Yeah, never used it before.
I don't know. I
don't know how it applies.
Like it's.
I think that's a term from baseball or something.
It's a word that has like a awkward mouth feel when talking about it. Just like that bodega, watermelon.
Exactly. It really leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
The word target, like bodega watermelon.
Exactly.
So what are some of the narratives from this week, Joe?
This is gotten out of control.
Speaking of no targets, let's talk about Terrace Marshall.
I tried to follow you down that rabbit hole, but that went somewhere dark and somewhere that we can't follow anymore, Andrew. Anyways, let's get to some week 12 storylines. I guess there aren't too many non-straightforward storylines to get to. Obviously, we have all of the injuries we mentioned up top. Dalvin Cook looks like he's going to miss at least 2 weeks with a shoulder dislocation, although it seems like he's avoided the worst, according to the reports, which were all over the place when that first came out. Like, all of a sudden people were like, he has a torn labrum. And they're like, no, he doesn't. He has that in the other shoulder, and he's been playing with it.
Totally.
He's used to that.
Doesn't need shoulders. I mean, 2 shoulders. He's fine with one. He'll be fine with without 2 shoulders.
Needs shoulders like JaMychal Hasty needs knees.
Oh, deep reference.
Deep. That is like a year-old reference. We haven't referenced JaMychal Hasty sucking on knees.
Context.
No, it doesn't. That's a complete. Andrew's going for the deep cuts today. But moving on from there, obviously Jay mentioned Deebo Samuel as well. Groin injury reportedly out for 1 to 2 weeks possibly. So yeah, watch out for that. Hopefully you have some other options at wide receiver. Deandre Swift had remind me, was that a shoulder as well?
It's another shoulder. Tough week for shoulders.
He's day to day. He might play this week.
It didn't sound great for this week. I don't know, but it was like he was really still in pain. So
yeah, and I don't know why you would risk it as Detroit. Like, what are you playing for? A win, I guess. One.
I guess a win. So which they're probably playing for. You don't want to go winless, but
yeah. And then we also had the biggest news from the past week was Christian McCaffrey injured again. He is back on IR and out for the season. This was a high ankle sprain, I believe, and they thought it was problematic enough where they shut him down for the whole season. Obviously, he's already been on IR this year, so if you're going to put him on IR, that means he's done. So that CMC, let's stick with CMC for a moment. We talked a little bit about this a few weeks ago with running back rankings. Then he comes back in, has a couple good games, injured again. He started 10 games in 2 years, and 3 of those games he's left with an injury. That has made him miss significant time. What do we make of CMC going forward? Is this are we just confirming our priors? Have we baked this into CMC already?
Yeah, it's hard to say, and I think I'm just sort of staying with the analysis I already gave a few weeks ago, where my thoughts is I just sort of feel like the amount of usage that he gets is just starting to catch up to him. I know he rolled his ankle. There's probably a case to be made that that's sort of like a freak thing like that. But I just feel like the amount of injuries that are mounting up for him, one way or another, connected to one or the other, it's all just becoming kind of damning of his long-term production, what he can do if they don't sort of rein it in. I feel like his usage just is not sustainable, and it seems strange that he came back, he was doing fine, and you can see the drop in someone like Chuba Hubbard's usage. It's like he kind of proved that he could be used as probably more of a piece to lighten the load for Christian McCaffrey. Whether or not that would have prevented this rollover, who's to say? But I just feel like the sooner they look to lessen the load on him, the better. And it's disappointing because for fantasy owners that hope for that number 1 running back performance out of him, a lessened load probably spells out less chances of that. But yeah. I prefer a healthy, less productive Christian McCaffrey over a constantly injured one.
I think the biggest frustrating thing in terms of ranking with him is, like, with some guys that are injured, and, like, obviously this isn't great for those players, or not something we wish on anyone, but, like, they come back from this strings of injuries like this and don't look good. Every time he's playing, he looks good. He looks explosive. His hands are good. that's never been a problem. So the thing you're always have in the back of your head is, well, what if when he does come back, he stays healthy this time? Like, the value is just so tantalizing that, like, it's tough to kind of write him off. Like, I remember when guys were, I'm trying to think of a good example of something like this. I don't know, Devonta Freeman, maybe, who's had a little bit of a resurgence this year, but like when he started to pile up some injuries a couple years ago, he then just didn't look good either. So it made it easier to just kind of be like, okay, I'm just gonna eat my losses and
think
move
that's
on.
a good point. I mean, CMC among more than anybody else really leads you towards that short-term memory thing, because when he comes back, he looks great, and when a player is doing great, it's very easy to forget about those concerns. You become very carefree quickly, and you always wonder if that's what's happening with Carolina. They're just like, yeah, look at him, he looks great. Like, let's just ramp it back up, like, and just start running this offense through him again.
That's what they seem to do with every running back they play. Like, Chuba Hubbard got tons of usage. Mike Davis last year, tons of usage when he. Yeah. It seems like they just kind of go, well, we're just gonna go with one back and give him. I mean, you should do that with CMC because he's that talented, but it has kind of built up. But I kind of compare it to like when you're doing rankings next year, which I saw a lot of this out there. We seem to remember the injuries that happened recently. What's a little bit weird is like what running back is guaranteed to stay healthy next year? It's like, I understand now that CMC's piled this many up, it starts to wear on you where it's like, man, can I trust this? But we were just kind of talking about Joe Mixon like that. Last year, he didn't play almost the entire year. Coming into this year, all of a sudden now he's fantasy superstar Joe Mixon, top 5 running back, getting volume, 30-plus touches just like CMC. Austin Eckler was hurt all last year. What is your point about
All-Star Joe Mixon?
He was injury-prone Joe Mixon. Now he's like going to win you a championship Joe Mixon. Austin Eckler hurt last year. Now, he won't get hurt again, a guy, a 5'8" running back next year. So it's like they're all in the same pool of when you take one of these guys, you're playing with a little bit of fire in terms of the injury. Now, you got to take that into account. CMC's probably not the number 1 overall pick necessarily next year. I think it's probably Jonathan Taylor if you're doing redraft rankings. And we have him already in Dynasty at number 1.
We all have that, yeah.
Because, you got age against CMC already, a few years on Jonathan Taylor regardless. But, man, some of these guys, it's the same thing. Dalvin Cook, I mean, he's got multiple injuries right now. What are you doing with him next year? Saquon Barkley hasn't stayed healthy for 2 years. So you have a lot of guys in a similar territory where I think the point's right. It's like we haven't seen the production go down when he's in. So I think you could still go back to that well at the right point, depending on where you're drafting, and still hoping for the best in terms of the injury, but it's certainly weighing on you, and it's probably going to affect where you kind of slot him when you're doing rankings in the future.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough and I think this kind of happens in like fits and spurts, and especially in Dynasty. Like, we've seen this before where like one wave of players starts to trail off and another comes in, and it creates kind of a weird like vacuum in a lot of ways. Like, we just saw this with like quarterbacks. Like, Breeze retires, Brady keeps going, but whatever. Big Ben, Phillip Rivers, those guys kind of trail off. With running back, we see that more frequently. And that 2017 class is going to, just by the level of attrition and taking more hits and getting a little older, that class is going to start to trail off. The Kamaras, the Cooks, the
eventually
the Mixons, eventually they are
catch up.
And so we're at this point where I feel like I've got my hand hovering over like over the bail button, over the eject button on the 2017 class. It may not happen this year, may not happen next year, may not happen the following year completely, but like at some point with those players, I'm starting to shorten the leash a little bit. Just because of the track record of guys. But at the same time, we've seen people be productive for prolific running backs going on 10 years in production. You look back at like LaDainian Tomlinson, who was like lights out for 8 to 10 years. You look at Adrian Peterson, you've seen these examples. So could CMC like come back next year and play all 16 games and be like same old CMC. Yeah, that's both the worry and the excitement. But like,
yeah, it's the
10 games in 2 years.
Play. And I think Tommy in the chat has the right point. It's like,
I completely agree with
no
that.
injury. Like, I don't think, like, I mean, no injury. Like, every running back can get hurt. They're not necessarily injury prone. It's just sort of
should
like
be
when
baked into the position.
When are they going to get hurt? You know, there are some guys I think that cross the, like Will Fuller's probably injury prone. I think he's a receiver, but I think he's probably injury prone.
Like, if you get to a level
every running back
and
get
beyond
hurt, you know?
the average for that position.
Yeah, it's just like next year it'll be like 3 different guys that this year were totally cool, totally healthy the whole year, and next year we'll probably be talking about can you trust this guy going forward? And it's like,
also, it makes sense. Like there's studies on this. Like by position, the running backs suffer injuries more than any other skill position by far. And you just look at like the things they're asked to do, like them and tight ends, I believe, are the 2 highest, and they're asked to block more. They take more contact generally. All of these things are true.
I could fall on your ankle, kind of thing.
Yeah. So obviously there's the freak things
where things can just like freak things can happen. It's a dangerous spot to be in, but. Overall, this really feels like that time of year where you really start wondering, like, is something like 0 RB the right way to go, or like really investing much less into the position? Because it's like when you look at a year like this, when I don't know, I could have rolled in with maybe 1 good running back, and hey, I could just buy James Conner for first. I can buy Leonard Fournette. It seems like more than any other, there's like just these guys that like you can probably pick up on the cheap, as we've discussed before, and it's just
I feel like
other guys are falling off. It's just as long as you're
being an active trader
positions,
helps, particularly in Dynasty. Stay active, getting running backs into your mix. To
overall, I just think like I'd never be afraid to keep things fluid with the running back position. Don't fall in love with any one play. Like just keep sort of mixing it up there, because no guy's gonna stay forever. There's gonna be other guys who emerge. So I guess I shouldn't say that
to that point. I think it's kind of in both things. I think honestly, like in redrafts, I almost think it's a case for more investment in running back in a way, not necessarily up front all the time. Like I think try to take a stud running back up front if you can, that's fine. But I think in your mid rounds, it really calls for you to try to like pile up guys who you think have upside.
Sure. I mean,
in Dynasty, if I'm doing a startup, I think there is some merit to like if we want to call it 0 RB, if we want to call it fading RB, and trying to like take some shots on guys. Like if you took a shot on a guy like Leonard Fournette in a later round, it paid off for you this year. Obviously, those don't always come through. But then, as you said, if you find yourself in a position where you're stacked at QB, stacked at wide receiver, and have like a Travis Kelce or have a Mark Andrews or something like that after your startup, you can go out and trade for a running back who's in your top 10 right now. Like, look, I was just looking today at like the top 10 ranked for this week. ESPN's like consensus top 10 ranks of guys, and it is wild. It is bizarre. Elijah Mitchell's in there. AJ Dillon's in there. Leonard Fournette, I think, is like running back 4
like 2
of the week.
Deservedly so.
It's great, but at the same time, like the guy, I think this year's been particularly bad in terms of attrition at the running back position. I mean, to some extent, it happens every year. These guys rotate out, especially later in the years as injuries pile up. But there's still, like, at the top of your draft, you have Austin Eckler, you have Jonathan Taylor. You have Joe Mixon to a lesser extent. All of these guys had, like, you were drafting in the first 3 rounds of particularly your redraft league. So I think there is some, like, I think it is worth taking those swings on those top end players.
I think
to an extent.
Yeah, definitely in redraft, but I feel like in startups and doing Dynasty, it's like I like to I'm so at odds with how I value running backs, where it's just like, oh, don't be afraid to sell any of them, because it's like the most shifting, like, fluid position in the game, but also it's like you gotta have them. So I don't know, I like sort of a hybrid approach of, like, if I was gonna do it, like I want to invest in one stud running back, and then from there I'll piece it together.
It's the reason why, I think if you look across content in the fantasy football guide, I think most of them end up lamenting about running backs more often than not, because it's like you said, it's the most fluid position on a number of angles. And then just to circle back to the injury prone comment, I do think that I think there are things that lend themselves to if a player is injury prone or not. I just think they're not the things that we're talking about. It's not necessarily like this player has racked up X amount of injuries, because there are like bad luck injuries, as we talked about. You step on a guy's ankle wrong and it rolls the weird way. But there are stuff that people much smarter than any of us in terms of, physical health and kinesiology and all of these things can attribute to, like muscle stability and various things that do actually make players more injury prone than others. I just think it's not something that we can really evaluate without that expertise. And so it's just kind of futile talking about it. Because I think for by and large, it's a violent game and running backs take a brunt of a lot of these things. So it's just baked into the position.
Yeah, we're mostly commenting on a trend, like when we talk injury prone. There's no expertise in that observation.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's move on to our main segment of the week, and let's talk about these Dynasty rebuild target stash groupings. This is our catchy segment name that we're calling it. So we're going to throw out 3 names in a group, and we're going to choose and debate which one is our pick to be our go-to Dynasty rebuild buy. Our first group is Jerry Jeudy, T. Higgins, or Chase Claypool. Out of those 3, which one are you choosing to bring into your rebuild? Jay, we'll start with you.
For me, it's T. Higgins out of these 3 for a couple reasons. One, I like the quarterback better. Joe Burrow, that offense has shown that they can throw the ball. Higgins could be the number 2 to Chase, but I think that's fine in that offense. They've shown the ability to support a couple of guys there, and he's had a great target share the whole year. We saw it this week. It came to fruition where he had the most targets, had the best game out of any of the receivers there. He's going to be able to do that. I think he'll be able to do it a little bit more consistently, even if he's the number 2 there. I trust him more than the situations I see elsewhere. I like those 2 other players in Jeudy and Claypool. I'd probably prefer Jeudy slightly over Claypool at this point, but it's close. I just worry about those offenses and where they're going. You're going to have to hope that they figure it out. Jeudy from just that offense seems capped. Considering Teddy B's there, if that's anything more long term, that's just there's just a very, very low ceiling there.
Yeah.
And then Claypool, Big Ben's kind of washed, and we'll see what the future is there. So for me, it's Higgins.
Andrew, what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I also go Higgins here for most of the same reasons as Jay. I mean, apples to apples, I think he's the best talent among these 3, and also agree that he has kind of the best situation. Jeudy does kind of have more of the situation where he could be the guy, whereas I feel like with Chase and Johnson on the respective teams, like there kind of is like a real a guy that commands more of an alpha role in those others. But I also am the least confident about Judy's ability to
you still got Sutton too.
Sutton. That's
Sutton
true.
and him. I mean, he definitely has had more target share than Sutton, but it's like the 2 together. It seems like on that offense right now.
I guess my thought
support multiple. Really.
Yeah, I guess I don't put Sutton anywhere close to those other 2 guys. Like so, I feel like he's the more able to leapfrog him, at least from a fantasy perspective in usage. So, yeah, no, T. Higgins for sure here. And we've talked enough about the ability to support 2 top 12 receivers in fantasy on the same team. It happens plenty. It's happening this year twice. 2 instances of that with, what is it? Or maybe it's close to that, because I think
as of last week, Jefferson and Thielen were in that group, as well as Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. We're both top. We're all 4 were top 12.
It's actually close to because I think if we went like top 18, you'd have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen as well.
Yeah, I think
so.
that's
It's just like a lot
close,
of duos like on the same team producing very highly. So
I'm not really concerned.
T. Higgins can produce right up there next to Jamar Chase.
Yeah, it's a league that can support multiple wide receiver options. Like it's a league that's scoring a lot more. And actually, that is a good point in the comments. Denver did just pay Tim Patrick, who is a good receiver. It's just Troy
Aikman would say he was the best receiver on that team. I believe he said that on Thursday
night. He provides a really good role for them in terms of like a big contested catch guy. I like Tim Patrick a lot. And they have Noah Fant there, and they have Javonte Williams in the running game there.
On the ball.
So they have a lot of offensive weapons.
Dynamic duo running back game.
Yeah, they do. It really is.
Split forever, Jay.
It's getting a little bit more. It's getting a little bit more to Javonte Williams, who just looks better. But we don't need to talk more about Javonte Williams at this point. I agree with both of you. I'm going with T. Higgins. He's just more productive right now. I like the stability of that offense. To be honest, I like all three of these guys. Like if we could take all of the above, like I like all three of them. Judy and Chase Claypool, though, I do agree. Like they need to get quarterbacks to kind of stretch that out, because I think all of them are in the same tier skill set wise. I like all of them skill set wise. They do different things. But T. Higgins right now, I think he can help you win sooner than later. And like all other things being equal, I think his long-term value is just the same as those other three guys.
Yeah, the premise here is kind of like if you're a rebuild team, you're in a trade negotiation. This is kind of the guys you're throwing into a trade. Maybe you're getting some picks. It's like, who would you bring in? And Higgins, these guys are guys that might not help. Maybe the contenders looking for the surefire, receiver in this instance.
That's
Devonta Adams or something.
I took this in.
I would take any of these three, depending on who has them in your league. But Higgins, in a vacuum, I would take him. If I'm having a guy thrown into my trade, that's the one I hope for.
Let's move to our next grouping though, and we're going to talk about some quarterbacks. And this is less of I like all of these guys. Okay, here we go. Here's some dice rolls. So group 2 is Zach Wilson, Daniel Jones, and Baker Mayfield. Angela, let's reverse back to you. Who out of this group are you taking?
Yeah, so this one I went a different line of thinking and going more into that if I'm trying to build a trait, like who do I think? And I'm going to say I'm going to go Zach Wilson here, and this is why. I think out of this group, due plenty to his performance, I think his value is like a bit lower than these other guys. I think you can get him cheaper in a trade. You could definitely find people that are probably like, oh god, he's a busted play. But I still want to stick with what we saw on tape. It's like we know he has the physical tools. Maybe he never does it. Maybe he is another bust. But it's like we know he has the ability. We like what he saw. There's a reason why his evaluation got him as the number 2 overall quarterback in this past draft. So I'm going to trust what I see and hope that he can turn it around there, and I'll get him as the cheapest player. Jones might be close. I feel like I'm definitely not banking on Baker Mayfield here, because I think Baker as a name still sort of commands more, and I am sort of more disappointed with what I've seen out of him, and he's also headed towards a contract thing, and whether the Browns want to stick with him, I think he might just make it, but there's some risk there with Baker more than it would seem on the surface. So while he's the guy, if I'm taking one of these players, actually I don't know, I might take the upside. I might take the upside with Jones over Baker if I was trying to do win right now, but that's not what we're talking about.
Jay, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm with Wilson. I think he's more of the we haven't seen it enough. He's young. He just came out. You got to give him more of a chance. So if I could throw him into a trade, I'd do that. My concerns on the other one, I think Baker's ceiling, once again, I don't think it's high at all. I think we've seen that. He is heading into his 5th year. They have not.
You kind of know what you're getting with him.
And then Jones, like Gettleman, there were rumors that he's out. That's the guy who drafted Daniel Jones there. That team has not won with him.
If they get rid of Gettleman, I feel like there's almost no doubt that they probably draft someone.
Yeah, why? I don't think he's guaranteed a job.
Long change. Yeah.
I guess that is like the fear with all of these guys where there's at least a trend of like Wilson still has to prove that he can be
Wilson should take
full-time.
2 more. He should get 1.
He should get 2. They gave Darnold 3 years, and Darnold did not have a great time there. So you'd think you'd get the same out of them, but if he's giving you 3 years of what Darnold gave you, that's not a startable guy, even in Superflex. So that's the concern, and then he ends up losing a job and is irrelevant. So there's some risk there, but obviously I think I agree with you guys. The upside with Wilson is much higher than these other 2 guys. Daniel Jones is probably the one is the easy knockoff of this list. I'm not touching Daniel Jones probably. I think it's more likely than not he's out of a job, if not this offseason, then the following offseason. And Baker Mayfield is tough because if he had already had his contract extended, I would be all for Baker Mayfield because I think it's the safest bet, but he hasn't, and I think there's at least enough doubt there. As soon as Baker gets a contract extended, I probably it's a toss-up between the two, between upside and safe floor.
Sure. Yeah, safety.
I know a guy's going to be their starting quarterback for an extended amount of time. And at least there's been moments where Baker has strung together a series of solid QB2 stats. End of last year, even the beginning of this year for a little while, he's quite injured in multiple places. So maybe you can say, okay, let's maybe write off the past few weeks, but this has been the Baker story for 3 years now. It's the up and down for whatever reasons. And there's always excuses, but at the end of the day, at some point, you got to think, is it the quarterback? So if Baker gets that contract, it's more of a conversation, but I'm sticking with Zach Wilson for right now. Let's move to our next group. Michael Gallup, Gabe Davis, or Van Jefferson. Jay, let's bounce it back to you.
Yeah, this is a group of sort of that, I don't know, these wide receiver 4 or 5s, something like that. They're all kind of buried on depth charts right now when the guys are healthy on their team. I'm going Gallup for more of the mystery box element because he's the free agent. He's the one next year who could get into a different situation. So I like that because he's shown flashes. He will disappear at times, but even kind of in that Thanksgiving game last week where everybody was hurt or had COVID, he kind of was is Gallup playing? And then all of a sudden he would have some nice contested catches on the sideline in a couple spots. He played pretty well, but there was also times where where did he go? I like what I see at times.
That is who he is.
I think that's why I don't
feel like he's a mystery to me.
No, I like the mystery is the mystery of the team. Can he go to a spot that unleashes him a little bit more, where he's not going to be a 1 on a team, but maybe he gets to an offense where he's a 2 that could be a productive player for you for fantasy. Jefferson's my second guy there. I just don't know if he's ever kind of beyond a 3. That's probably where he's going to be on that Rams team. I liked him in flashes, particularly this year. He still drops too many passes for me. I know that probably could be something corrected, but he's had some times where it's he'll do a good route and he just doesn't kind of finish the job. But I still like what I've seen. I feel like there's been a progression there. So I'd take him second on this list if I was choosing. But I like Gallup just for a little bit of upside, not kind of knowing where he's going. And Gabe Davis has been another leap there. He's still very, very buried on that Buffalo team. I don't know what I'm getting there. So I would go Gallup here.
Yeah, I don't see much to go on about Gabe Davis. He probably out of these guys most feels like the Jag. He's got good size, and more that prototypical, but that's about it. I don't see much out of him. It was probably close between Gallup and Jefferson, but I actually leaned towards Jefferson. I think I've been the one who's a little higher on him out of the 3 of us. I like his route running. I think as opposed to Gallup, he's the guy that maybe is a little bit closer to having a little more special and upside to him. I think Gallup is the solid professional player. Definitely has to be operating in that wide receiver 2 role. But Jefferson, I think, does some great stuff and finds space and weird play. Like you said, he just kind of can't finish the job sometime. But I do think that might be correctable. I'd like to see better hands and maybe like a little more I don't even know how to describe, because there was still that sort of, it almost looked like this spazzy jump when he was going for one of the touchdown, and it's just like there wasn't that discipline to the move, but like that feels more correctable to me. Because he's got the ability to get open and to make that space to make the play. He's just going to learn to finish it.
Yeah, all things being equal, I don't necessarily have a huge preference talent-wise on any of these guys. I think they're all like pretty good football players. Like, I think they're all like are professional football players. I don't know any other way to say it besides that. They're guys who should be like in a rotation on a team, and they are, and they're doing that. The question is, can any of these guys be more than the number 3 receiver on a team? And in terms of a path to that, I lean Michael Gallup, because like Jay said, he's a free agent. Maybe he ends up on a team next year where he gets more of a role. Like, I think of like, this is maybe not a situation that happens, but let's say Mike Williams moves on from the Los Angeles Chargers, and they sign him, and the Chargers sign Michael Gallup as that replacement for Mike Williams. He's the number 2 to Keenan Allen there. Then okay, cool. Maybe that's a great situation. I think there's probably there's teams that are going to be like needy at wide receiver who bring in Michael Gallup, and he ends up having like a nice solid season where he's more akin to what he was pre CeeDee Lamb. But I guess like worst case scenario is he gets a lot of money to go to a team that's not very good, has a bad QB a la Kenny Golladay. That's kind of your worst case scenario with them.
Jacksonville next year, you know.
Yeah, I mean that actually wouldn't be a bad landing spot
at all. It's actually not bad. It's pretty wide.
They need playmakers and guys who can go and can separate down the field, and Michael Gallup can do that. Like, I don't know if Michael Gallup's skill sets are multiple, but he can get down the field and separate late. And I like that. But let's move on to our next grouping. And I'm going to move to a tight end group here. And these are some real deep cuts, but we have Noah Gray, Tommy Tremble, and Hunter Long. These are names we have not heard on the podcast in a long time. Andrew, who do you got here?
This one was sort of like who cares? No, I mean, yeah,
it's a deep stash, Andrew.
This one, yeah, for deep stash, I mostly stuck with just pre-draft analysis and went with Noah Gray. Like, I like some of his skills, operates probably more as that like athletic pass catching tight end than like the traditional one. And also being on a Kansas City team, I think that offers kind of the good opportunity. We liked Hunter Long too coming out, but he's kind of behind what's his name, Gesicki there in Miami, right?
Yeah.
So I
and Adam Shaheen.
And I guess saying that, I should have pointed out that Kelsey is in front of Noah Gray in Kansas City, but he's a little
someone ahead of
along.
Well, Tommy Tremble, I don't know if he has a lot there, but
I just look.
He might have the least.
I'll admit that I don't have much on Tommy Tremble, so I was gonna go with Hunter Long or Noah Gray here. So I liked the touchdown Noah Gray got a couple weeks ago there, pretty good in the back of the end zone. Let's go with him.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just talking pure upside, I guess there is an opportunity possibly in a few years for Noah Gray to be tight end 1 in Kansas City after, Travis Kelce moves on, maybe. I guess, and he's probably the best pure pass catcher out of the group, but this is certainly a deep stash. I don't know. I might even lean Tommy Tremble because I think he has the clearest role to touches. He has some touchdowns. Like, I think he might have he might be like most likely to be Robert Tonyan. You know what I mean?
I mean, why not throw Brevin Jordan in here with clearest path to touches on their team?
Brevin Jordan has had some nice catches.
He's had a couple touchdowns in the last couple of weeks, right? And Tommy put in
Who's
the
there
chat.
to compete with?
Granson's good too. You can add. I mean, these are all the rookies that were the next run after the Muth.
Yeah.
This was like the run of
the
6
Muth
after.
line.
I think.
Look, these guys are all under the Muth line, so
they're all like good throw-ins.
Slim
Like if you could
pickings.
stash a bunch of players, like depending on how deep your rosters are, any of these guys are probably. Noah Gray was out of those 3. I would probably go with him. I liked Long though. He was like, I think I had him above Gray at the time, but then he got hurt. Tough path there, but Granson could go him. Brevin Jordan's interesting to a degree, although I didn't love him coming out, but
does not block.
No,
seems like he chooses not to block.
Oh
sometimes.
no. One might say
block.
a liability.
Why block?
No, Brevin Jordan.
Catch passes.
Brevin Jordan should be used the way the Patriots used Jonnu Smith. That's what Brevin Jordan should be used as a move tight end. He should not be inline blocking. He cannot do it. He's terrible at it.
Yeah. Only use him in 12 personnel where there's another tight end to take on that type of role and split him out or use him for an end around type play.
Yeah, that's what you should do.
One of these guys will be good in a couple years. You'll just be like, that like at least
good
one
luck
of these guys will hit.
And that's about enough on those tight ends. Let's move to our next group, which I think
I had a clock of 1.5 minutes.
This next group is pretty fun, I think. Zach Moss, Trey Sermon, or Kenny Gainwell. We're calling this the healthy scratch list.
Ooh. Jay?
Yeah, they were all healthy scratches recently, or either last week or within the past couple of weeks. For me, this came down to I think I'm out on Zach Moss. I think that's it.
Same.
I agree.
I think Buffalo's out on Zach Moss.
I think he's done.
But then I look at Kenny Gainwell, and I think I ultimately pick him if I'm going to throw in for a trade, just because I think he has probably the safest floor of a pass catcher. I mean, he's only averaged 3.4 yards per carry when he rushes, but we know he can catch the ball. If he can carve out a role where he's we've compared him to like Nyheim Hines in the past. It's like he's going to be that pass catcher, comes in on
Hines.
third. You could probably play him if you want mystery box of like maybe San Francisco just hated Trey Sermon and he goes somewhere else, or who knows? They just decide to play him more next year. Yeah. Maybe. If you want to just throw in, I'm sure someone will just give you them. If
Trey Sermon has a Samaje Perine like upside.
So I almost want to just it's not like you don't go trade for Trey Sermon, but if you're like in trade negotiations, it's like you got Sermon too. Can you just throw him in? I don't know if you have room. You never know. I think he's like
Trey Sermon is the 3rd round pick surrogate as far as.
I mean, I don't like Trey. Me and Josh, I don't like him, but I mean, Kenny Gainwell. I feel like it's like I don't know if there's a ton of upside there. I would trade for him too. Like I have no problem with that, but there's a little bit of like if I could get just Sermon thrown into a trade, it's kind of a lottery ticket that's probably not going to hit. But
yeah, there are moments. I mean, in this past week's game, and when they got into hurry up, it was Kenny Gainwell that was out on the field.
He caught 3 passes. He didn't get I don't think he got 0 carries in this game. So
I'm just reading this comment here. That's why I see it kind of have to play.
I don't think you can't play special. I don't know. It's just
that's why they picked up Trenton Cannon and have him. That is the thing. But it's like ultimately, if you're not playing because you don't play special teams, it means that you are the 3rd or 4th running back on the roster.
He's never really played this year. It's just sort of I don't know. He's like I don't want to get Trey Sermon, but at the same time, it's like there's a sort of like a guy hasn't played, so it's sort of like the Zach Wilson thing where you're like, I don't know, he hasn't played enough for me to make a determination on if he's completely garbage yet.
Yeah, I get that, but I mean, I go back to our pre-draft analysis and what we saw, and I just I like Kenny Gainwell's skill set so much more than
his floor is his floor is
so much better.
He can at least catch pass.
I
can at least do that.
I thought Kenny Gainwell was my 4th running back pre-draft. I had him over Carter. No, I had him higher than Carter for pre-draft. like NFL draft. After he got drafted, I had Carter higher, but I really liked Kenny Gainwell, mostly for the pass catching ability. I thought there was a role. Like, I mean, the reality, he's not going to be great between the tackles. It's never going to be what
I
he's
just haven't loved everything I've seen. He then the healthy scratch for like when Jordan Howard's coming in. I guess they
healthy
just
scratch
like
is weird. That sort of thing is strange. But then again, you look at like Damian Harris was a healthy scratch like his entire rookie year, and so people like get that their rookie years. Too. I'm less I'm less worried about that than I am with like Zach Moss, who this is what, year 3 for Zach Moss? Year two for Zach Moss, and he had moments where it's like I'm like okay. I think we're done with Zach Moss. Trey Sermon is just completely like what they drafted him
like a wild swing. I think he's a bust, but it's like if I could, it
just feels like
whatever.
It's one of those things that it would feel more. It's hard to say he's a bust because he hasn't played enough for like to think that. But I mean, there's plenty of players that just go on to be roster cloggers in that way when they just don't get on the field. Like you think of more for like injury concerns, like the people like Kevin White or someone like that were just these big, he's coming back, or Kenneth Dixon or some of these guys that people just probably waited on for years and just never got anything out of them. So I definitely feel like Kenny Gainwell is the slight higher pick for me in this group, but also just because I already said that I'm not going to bat for Trey Sermon anymore. I'm done with that. But he is the guy that I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him get like a real opportunity because he absolutely has not, and it's sort of a shame because.
I don't know if it's ever gonna come in San Francisco because it just
it might not come there.
Because Elijah Mitchell's been really good, and if Elijah Mitchell's healthy, seems like he's the guy. They like Jeff. They like Jeff Wilson. They like Raheem Mostert when he's healthy. I know these guys aren't under contract next year, but Sermon may be cut by this time next year. I don't know.
Gets cut and goes somewhere else. It seemed like the writing was on the wall since Elijah Mitchell landed there. It's just like, well, we liked him. Mitchell's good too, and he's a better scheme fit for this team. And like Trey Sermon suddenly a healthy scratch. Oh, look at Elijah Mitchell doing well. It's just. From week 1 out, like it was just the writing was on the wall, and I just love to see him get like a second chance somewhere else.
I do just love that. I mean, legitimately, Jay had this take in the summer when we were evaluating. Not that he was like Elijah Mitchell's gonna beat him out.
Yeah.
Like he was like, I just like the talent. I think he fits this scheme well. He's very Mostert-esque, so he fits well with that outside zone scheme. He can fly. He's a one-cut guy. Like he just puts his foot in the ground and goes fast upfield in an outside zone scheme, and it just felt like that fit really well.
Josh,
and I think.
Do you remember the game we used to play in we do a tape evaluation on Sermon? we used to take freeze frames and go, where did Sermon run? Because there were times with vision with him where it was like, oh, there's like a gap here, and then there's like all the blockers here. He runs into the blockers.
Look, some running backs don't have vision. You don't need vision to be a running back.
I mean, it was like he had some electric games.
Just let the force guide you.
In the college football playoff, but there were some times in some tape where we were like, oh my god, like what was he looking at? It was just like wide open field, but
the vision stuff is always a problem.
Yeah, I think I leaned way too hard into like, well, someone's got to be like pounding the pavement for Sermon here, and luckily, like my drafts do not reflect my perceived love for Sermon, but he is a hard lesson learned nonetheless.
Yeah, that one was rough. I'm glad we sniffed that out, Jay. Like pigs getting truffles.
I got more Elijah Mitchell shares than I do Trey Sermon, so
I traded my one Elijah Mitchell share at the time. It was like really early on, and I was like, "Oh, let's get on this now." And it was Chris Carson, and then Chris Carson got injured, and I was like, "Oh, fucking hell!"
Yeah, that's
it was pretty bad. Anyways, let's move on to our next grouping. We're gonna go back to wide receiver now, and this group is Kadarius Toney, Laviska Shenault, and DJ Chark.
Love this group.
Jay, let's go to you then if you love it so much.
Why don't you marry it?
Why don't you marry
Maybe
it?
I will.
You love it so much.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle. Kyle, avid listener to the show. Going for 2, Kyle.
Yeah.
Fellow staff member there. For me, this group is... It's tough. This group is an
Tony,
interesting
right?
one. It's not Tony Frank. I'm going to go Chark. DJ Chark.
I went the same way, and those were the two.
I just think he got hurt this year. I'd like to see him play a full year with Trevor Lawrence.
What did he do?
I would like
before
to
he
see
got
a different offensive scheme.
Wide
Maybe
receiver 17 in 2019.
He's done it a
I
little
meant
bit
this
before.
year.
Chark?
This year he got hurt.
This year he was hurt in preseason.
Yeah, Tony's my second. I think I go him over Chenault, just because he's interesting. But Chark is my guy out of these 3. I think there's some upside there still on that team. So
Andrew, did you not realize Chark was not playing this whole year?
Guy's getting zeros every week.
No, I'm asking when he got injured.
Preseason.
Yeah, it was really early on. Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't played a snap this year. It was in a game. It was an ACL.
Yeah, it was an ACL injury. So yeah, I would like to see him play with Trevor Lawrence. They've been trying to replace like kind of like the outside receiver this year. They've been putting Chenault out there, which is odd.
Not good for him. Not good.
I don't think Marvin Jones is long for that team. He seems like, although he'll flash occasionally, he seems pretty washed. It's just been a bad situation that whole year for
Jamal
that team. So
Agnew was like their
see
leading receiver
on that team, and unless LaVisca can get into like a Debo role where suddenly he can kind of do those types of things, which he's probably better suited for, I don't love that. And then Tony's a little bit of a wild card, but he's been interesting. He's shown flashes. I don't know if he doesn't finish games enough for me. He gets dinged up a lot.
He's very physical player.
Not necessarily like, once again, you don't know when that's going to happen, but he's just one of those guys that seems to lead. Like, you watch the ticker at the bottom of the screen, it's like, Tony, or you get the sleeper alert on your phone, and it's like Tony just went to the locker room for a second, and it's like for a litany of different things. So it's like, is that guy going to stay on the field enough? But Chark's just more of an upside play where the situation could get better for him when he gets healthy.
Yeah. I agreed with Chark. Andrew, it sounds like you're going Tony.
Yeah, no, well, I guess it's definitely not LaVisca, because it feels like, given the opportunity, other people are emerging or performing in Jacksonville while he is not.
Oh, Kyle's got it for us. Week 4, he's got hurt.
Yeah,
I remember that game.
I'm looking at that here. Also, while I'm looking at he had the week 1 looks all right with the touchdown and 86 yards, but 3 receptions on 12 targets. That was some disconnect between him and Lawrence week 1, but whatever. Lawrence working out the kinks there early on. I think Chark is fine, but I love that sort of upside in that special quality that I see to Kadarius Toney, and I think as a stash I'd go with him. I also feel like if we're talking value of who you can get cheaper in a trade, like I think Chark probably still stands as like the more expensive purchase, but
I think Chark's way cheaper than Tony right now.
Tony had a good there are people who liked him.
I'd
coming
have to
out,
see the trade logs, and it's just the guy who's injured right now probably.
He had a big game, so that kind of Chark's more of like these guys get their hype, and then the farther you get past your rookie year, if you haven't become Devontae Adams, your value slowly goes down. So I feel like Chark and Tony are at least equal in terms of what you
I can't remember where Chark would have fallen preseason. But
I think he had a pretty good preseason because there was a lot of, we thought this was going to be a better offense, and it's turned out to be, which, just because obviously ETN's injury.
Yeah,
Chark being injured,
Urban Meyer water on Chark, though. He kept calling Chark out. That was the...
Oh, yeah.
It really kind of flattened his value. Chark fell in redraft drafts where he would fall behind Marvin Jones. and behind Laviska Shenault, because there was a lot of Laviska hype, and Urban Meyer really just kept killing Chark, like just being like, I need him to play harder and crap like that.
I feel like I remember us talking like half in jest, like, yeah, Jones is probably the guy to have there, like, just because.
Tommy, but yeah, I didn't even see that.
Yeah, fuck
just
Urban
like
Meyer.
Urban buried him like the whole, which means he's probably good because Urban's great judge talent. So I don't know
Stop playing Laviska on the outside. It's not what he does.
No,
it's just
it's
he
a terrible
does not
misuse. Remember, just hear it now. I just think of how even more absurd it feels when it's like, oh yeah, he's using ETN exclusively in like a third down drill. Like, it's like, yeah, that's what we drafted the first round guy as. He's gonna be our third down back.
Yeah.
But man, those things, like, doesn't the Chark injury, it does to, like, I know it didn't happen in it feels like it was like 10 years ago that he got hurt. Like week 4 seems like, I don't know, it seems like ages ago that I watched that Bengals game. It seems like like last season. Like it's
feels
crazy
like a long time ago.
It feels like.
Yeah, not great. Let's move on to another grouping. So for this one, we have a battle of the handcuffs right here. So we have Tony Pollard, AJ Dillon, and Alexander Madison. Andrew, let's start with you.
This one was tough. But I kind of felt split between Pollard and Dillon. I'm just gonna go Dillon off of a recency bias, just because. And actually, this probably goes against what I was talking about with the value, because the guy who's done it more recently is probably going to be the more expensive person to purchase.
Well, Madison might be the most expensive right now, just cause
even more recent. As soon as Dalvin's down,
it's bad timing for any Madison trade. If
2 firsts for Madison, only deal you can get done.
I just feel like Dillon's the one that, given the opportunity, like, seems to have just shined every time he gets the chance. And then even this week with Aaron Jones coming back, it was obvious that they wanted to keep Aaron Jones on a snap count, that they were looking to just kind of have him dip his toe back in, but still out-snapped it, like, out-touched him like, 25-10, or like even more. Like, it was a pretty big difference, so they still felt good leaning on Dillon plenty in that match, and it just still did really well. But if I were to go with Pollard, I love that Pollard probably still has the best standalone value, that even if Zeke's playing there, he gets used. But
because of the passing game value, it seems like he gets used. It's a weird.
But I just do really like what I've seen, like when Dillon can be the guy. And then I don't know, I'm predisposed against Madison. I feel like he doesn't always make the most of his opportunity. Like he's got he's got skills, obviously, but like I feel like he's got some injury concerns of his own, and that he hasn't always performed as we've expected him when Dalvin's been out.
I also think his path to touches is purely based on Dalvin Cook's health, whereas the other two, I do think
he doesn't have standalone value.
There is a slightly to moderately better chance of standalone / they're the guy value. But Jay, before I get into my take on this, Jay, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, between Pollard and Dillon, those I think are the clear ones. It's just hard because there's no clear path to like starting on the teams that they're on, just because the other backs are signed at least through next year. In all circumstances, no one's coming out where like the guys might leave in the off season and then that guy takes over. There's at least a 1 year, waiting period if you're gonna stay on that team. I lean towards Pollard and Dillon just because I could see them getting jobs elsewhere. They've kind of shown the most, I guess, consistently over time. Although when Madison comes in, he does play well on that particular team. I guess I'd go Dillon. That's the one I would probably lean towards the most. Maybe it turns into, I guess, best case for like next year at least, is it turns into him getting more first and second down, and maybe Jones eases into more of like a third down role. Like there's a chance that happens. Like I'm not saying
that happening.
I don't know. Like Jones like is the more pass catcher back, although Dillon's caught a decent amount of passes this year, actually surprising. But I could see them going with more of like a 50-50 there as Jones gets a tiny bit older, has had some injuries, that maybe they want to keep the guys fresh. I mean, we're seeing those tandems, look at Melvin Gordon and Javonte this year. You see tandems all throughout the league, Jamie Harris and Ramondre and Brandon Bolden to a degree. I mean, you see these splits all over the place. And if you have a guy you drafted in the second round of a draft, the Packers spent draft capital on Dillon. They've seen that he's effective. Like, you could see maybe even more of like a 50-50 there next year where there's some value there. Pollard, the same thing. It's just they're kind of a toss-up, but slight edge to Dillon.
And I also wonder if, I mentioned before the prominence of the two wide receivers being fantasy relevant in any one team. And we've probably, to a much lesser extent, seen that happen for two running backs on the same team, unless it was Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. But I wonder if there'll be situations that, as opposed to a committee, you might see more situations like that arise where two running backs with perfectly complementary skill sets can kind of come together as like a more something that will show in
Ingram
fantasy.
and Kamara. We saw a couple years
Ingram
ago,
and Kamara,
which was similar to Chubb and Hunt, kind of.
It'd be interesting to see that become like a more predictable or a prominent thing in more run-heavy offenses, at least to an extent where be like two good running backs in the same system isn't like a death to value.
Possibly. It is an interesting thing. I do think more teams, particularly at the running back position, are really concerned more with like positional redundancies than anything because of the attrition at that position, and maybe that lends itself to not like trying to keep your second guy fresher and not having a pure 50-50 split where I don't know. I think there's a murkier path to that, but in the case of these three guys, I also lean AJ Dillon. One, he's a little younger. The draft pedigree is a little higher. Also, Green Bay could be entering a rebuild of sorts if the trades resurface and Aaron Rodgers is out of town. Next year, I could see them possibly like maybe pulling the ripcord and going, full rebuild, in which case Aaron Jones would be possibly a cap casualty there of trying to kind of cut cost and invest in the future, or trading him off, and then AJ Dillon becomes their guy. Nonetheless, I think then, particularly in that situation, then there's almost a guarantee that after the contract's up for Aaron Jones, or they have an easy out after next year, then AJ Dillon would become the guy in that situation. But I think like as long as Aaron Rodgers is there, Aaron Jones is probably going to be the guy, and if he's healthy, then AJ Dillon doesn't have a ton of standalone value, and Tony Pollard has probably more short-term value in a lot of ways because of the kind of explosive play upside, but all of them you're kind of sitting and waiting. Let's move on let's do one more of these, and I want to end with another quarterback one, because we haven't done one since the Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson group. And so the three we've got here, speaking of possibilities of Aaron Rodgers leaving town, we have Jordan Love, Davis Mills, or Marcus Mariota. Jay, let's go to you. This is a great group. This is kind of
you came up with this one, Josh. So Davis Mills, we saw play. He was better than expected. Jordan Love was worse than one of the worst I've ever seen, I guess.
Davis Mills was very Jekyll and Hyde. Davis Mills had two really good games, and then he had some
his bar
games.
Was very low. I mean, he exceeded the bar that I had for him. But then Jordan,
he was
Love,
a roller coaster.
Jordan Love was a roller coaster that was just crashing. Marcus Mariota is can he get another gig? This was a high.
For sure.
Drafted in the draft.
Number 2, right behind Jameis.
And lost his job and has never gotten it back. So, and he's the one I'm going with. If I'm going to stash a guy, I think his upside's the highest. I think if he got a job, I think there's a chance that is higher to me than the other ones where I've actually seen him play good games before.
Well, doesn't he have, like, he also kind of has that, like, Jalen Hurts thing. Like, we know Marcus Mariota is not going to be the most prolific passer. He's got a good rushing floor, I think, that provides some instant value, even if he's not necessarily a great NFL quarterback.
I thought there was a chance on the Raiders for that to happen. Maybe there still is, but we saw it happen with Tannehill. I think there's still some hope there.
Who took his job.
Right. So, but true. So yeah, he's gonna, that's how it goes. You lose job to him. Eventually you'll steal someone else's job, right?
I mean, it does seem like things are lining up a little bit for the Mariotas of the world, maybe the Jimmy Garoppolos if San Francisco cuts them from their roster this offseason, because I think there are a lot of teams that need quarterback and a murky draft class.
It seems weird that Heineke, who's played well for Taylor Heineke, and Garoppolo are playing for teams and Mariota's not kicking the tires for someone. Like, that's a little strange. He hasn't gotten one second chance yet, which is interesting. So
yeah, I mean, like, you could be looking at maybe Houston. You could be looking at Pittsburgh. You could be looking at
definitely Pittsburgh. That would be
you could be looking at a guy coming in to compete with Daniel Jones. Maybe they go that route. They go like the Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater route.
There's opportunities.
A lot of spots next year.
Yeah.
I think I counted 8 when I went through. It was like probably Carolina. Carolina is possibly a spot.
Keep it coming.
Yeah, I mean, who else do we want to go down the list and look at who could be a spot that's open for them? Let's see.
Green Bay. Rodgers
Green
leaves because they can't go with Jordan Love. Like, that's the thing with Jordan Love. Like, he's not the heir apparent because I don't think you can go into a year and be like, yep.
I feel like Jordan Love is the obvious not choice in this group for me. I gave Mills a lot, but also just because in Houston it's like, who knows? I mean, it seems like they will be actively on the hunt for more quarterback opportunities, but like if they lose out, I mean, it can keep going with Mills, and I can see him continuing to have maybe some sort of fantasy contribution in the future, but Mariota is for sure the guy that I want to see get a second chance.
Yeah, the biggest thing with Mills is just like there's not a lot of draft capital invested in him, and we've just seen time after time. Like, there's very little in both literal and personal investment in Davis Mills, so like whatever, if he works out, it's fine, but like I don't think he's got any sort of job or opportunity on lock.
Oh, no, it's only one of those things where it's like a mishap that he continues to play there because people like, we don't want to go to Houston.
Yeah, I mean, and they went to Tyrod Taylor when he was healthy, and that's been kind of the case there. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you. I'm taking the swing on Mariota just because, like, I think
there was no bigger tease.
Bet.
There was no bigger tease than that one like really good game he played filling in for Derek Carr last year. Where it was like, oh my God, maybe he can do it. Like, again,
Carolina feels like the place I want to see him in Joe Brady's offense, or if Joe Brady's still there. Like, that feels right. I don't know why. Maybe they draft someone and
look what Sam Darnold did from a rushing perspective there. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Get Marcus Mariota in there. An actual running quarterback who's like
Cam Newton's there now. But.
Let's be honest, you're not losing anything from a throwing perspective with Marcus Mariota for the guys that they've had in there.
Yeah. Not what Cam did this past weekend.
No, it's not. I mean, it's in that realm.
Was his
I think
QB rating
5, 10. It was 10. It was really bad.
For like 25% completion percentage.
It was this many. Yeah, you can count it on hands.
He had one touchdown drive.
That was a rough game. And he's only signed for a short term, and I think we know what Cam is. He's a rental for this year. Can we do one last one real quick? Just a lightning round, because I do like this one as well. This last group, running backs: Michael Carter, Chase Edmonds, or Ramondre Stevenson.
Michael Carter.
Andrew, you went Stevenson?
Yeah, no, it was really close between Carter and Stevenson. I think ultimately I do like Carter better in some of the upset, but like I just love what I've seen out of Ramondre. I'm also going kind of hometown there. I feel like he does everything that Damian Harris does and a little bit more because he's got the catching upside. And it's just, if he were to get more of that share in that offense, like we saw, I mean, we got to see a little bit of it with Damian Harris being out. I don't know. I feel like he's so outperformed what we even originally expected out of him. I like what I'm seeing.
I think as a pure runner, he's been terrific. Like, I mean, especially like, I think he's averaging like 4.8 yards per carry on the year, especially the past month. He's been absolutely annihilating people. There is a little bit of the passing upside. At the same point, Damian Harris is there. I don't know if his path to touches is immediately clear. And Michael Carter seems to be the guy when healthy in the Jets, which is a mess of a team. And Michael Carter's been lacking between the tackles, but that passing game upside and enough of the, the kind of outside zone stuff that he can do, I give the slight edge to Michael Carter there. Although I love what I've seen out of Ramondre Stevenson as a football player. I just don't know when he becomes fantasy relevant to the extent where I'm like, this is a top 15, this is a top 10 back. And Michael Carter, I can see that a little bit more happening sooner, particularly in PPR leagues.
I mean, doesn't it depend kind of on what we were talking about before, that Zach Wilson settling more into that role and starting to take some of those, like, don't always go for the hero, but it's like, take some of those easy passes, dump it off to Michael Carter.
Yeah,
His role with Zach Wilson has to.
Yeah, Zach Wilson seems to kill all fantasy relevant players, where it's like they all seem to do better with Mike White and Joe Flacco for some reason, including Elijah Moore and Michael Carter. So we'll see how that shakes out in the future with Zach Wilson. But yeah, he definitely can dump it off to any player that's open.
Does not love a dump off. Take the dump, Zach Wilson.
Take the dump.
That's a good place to end it
take
for tonight.
A dump.
We're ending it. That's it. That's all for today's episode of the Brothers of Dynasty. I'm Josh Christensen. Thanks as always for joining me. Everyone who's watching live right now and anyone who's listening on the audio only version on your podcast, remember you can subscribe to the Brothers of Dynasty's YouTube page here so you don't miss our show every Tuesday night, or subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to hear the audio only version. Thanks so much, Jay. And where can people find you?
You can find me at JC_DFF on Twitter. Write a little bit for goingfor2.com. Do the fantasy cheat sheet show that returns this Friday at 8:30 Eastern time. You can find that at the Going for Two Live Twitter page or the Going for Two Live YouTube page. So check that out there. There's also a lot of other great podcasts on the Going for Two Live network. So check all that out so you can find me at all those places.
And Andrew, thank you as always. And where can people find you and your music?
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, you can find me at DrewC_music. That's on Instagram and Twitter, and that'll also what is it? Jesus Christ, what am I doing? Ghostinthesnow.com. That's where you find the music stuff. You heard some music, some clattering at the beginning of this podcast. That's a song called Hired Guns by my band Ghost in the Snow. Go to ghostinthesnow.com to find all the socials that lead to that, and to go to all the streaming sites like Bandcamp, Spotify, Apple Music, all of them. Stream the music.
Stream
the
it.
Dump. Stream the music. That's
when you're taking a dump, stream that music.
That's all though. It's a little tinker stinker. That's it. Yeah. We're ending it. Thanks so much for listening. Remember to subscribe, to follow us at Bros of Dynasty on Twitter as well, so you don't miss all the updates. Hold up your same beers. I'm not holding up anything. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Have a good night.